Good evening, class. I hope you are all doing well, inshallah. First of all, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Zainab. I'll be taking you this year in English poetry or modern poetry. حدرسكم إن شاء الله بمادة الشعر الحديث. I hope you cooperate with me, تتعاونوني إياه، تدرسون اللي أنطيكم إياه يعني on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. Because if you leave it, it will get piled up, trust me. So, بالنسبة للمحاضرات, it will vary. Sometimes I will send you like a PDF or a video link, PowerPoint link. Sometimes, no, it requires for us, to do like, to do a Google Meet online lecture where we discuss things together, where we talk, face to face or voice to voice in order to understand things. I know, I'm pretty sure most of you know how to use the Google Classroom, the Google Meet. On the Classroom, you will find the Google Meet link Meet. So for maybe next week, I'll tell you that we have like an online lecture where I talk to you like a face or voice. You will find the link. It's set on the Classroom. It's visible for you. As for the attendance, I'll be posting every week, or this week, hopefully. Let's figure out what the next week will be. This week, I'll be posting, inshallah, today, a task for you. It's sort of like an attendance task, and you just answer the question. يعني راح ننزل لكم مهمة or السؤال بأنه يا ترى أنت موجود بالصف and أنت تجاوب لي بيس هو موجود الخيار multiple question or MCQ. You just find the yes option. You click on the yes option, which means yes, I am here. Okay. إن شاء الله بعد ما يعني أشرح لكم المحاضرة أتمنى أنه تقروها لأنه it's not really hard, it's easy. It will give you like a fresh start to the modern poetry because we can't just jump into the poets, we can't jump into analyzing the poems and all that without understanding the era, without understanding what is the modern poetry, without understanding what is modernism. Okay, so let's get started. This lecture will be like 30 minutes or probably 35, 25, depending on the explanation. So let's get started. I'll send you this also. I'll send you the PowerPoint link. So when you read, you have the option. You read it, on this YouTube link, or you open the PowerPoint link and read it for yourself. So, modernism is a comprehensive movement, let's read together, which began in the closing years of the 19th century and had a wide influence internationally during much of the 20th century. So, the era began the closing year of the 20th century and went through the 19th century and went through to the 20th century. Tamam? So this is the timeline of the era. Like every timeline is really, really important in literature. That's why if you type in on Google or Safari or whatever website, you just type in English literature timeline. You find like the timeline of the era because every era has its own time. Like I can't say, the romantic poetry. I have to know which period the romantic poetry is, right? So the time is really important. So let's get started into the modernism. What is modernism? What are its features? Reveals breaking away. So this word is really important. Reveals breaking away from established rules, traditions, and conventions. So in every era, we have like a certain way. يعني بكل عصر عندنا احنا there is a way. يعني اكو بعض العصور they tend to go to traditions, يعتمدون على التقاليد على normal ways. اكو بعضهم لا, they say no, we don't want that. We want new ways, we want new rules, we want fresh experiments, right? So this is the modern poetry or modernism. إنه they break away. So break away is really important word. really important word. بمعنى إنه هم يتحررون من التقاليد العادية، من القواعد العادية، من الأمور العادية. So imagine, so they're like saying, I don't want to write about nature. I don't want to write about, like all those, daily stuff. No, I want to write about, superior things, and we'll talk about those things later inshallah. يعني يقولون احنا ما نريد نتحدث عن امور عادية like nature, love and all that. لا، احنا نريد نتحدث عن امور يعني نفسية، امور existence, like امور يعني الوجود من هذه الامور. تمام. Fresh ways of looking at man's position and function in the universe, and many experiments in form and style. جربوا هواي تجارب in form بالصيغة and style والstyle. It is practically concerned with language and how to use it, and with writing itself. So this is one of the things about modern poetry or modernism and all its genre, that it does not use hard language, like the Shakespearean, the romantic language, the classical language. No, they use everyday to-day basic like words, like simple words, because whenever a person who uses it, they will understand immediately without any complex stuff, right? Sorry. So with writing itself, style or movement in the arts that aim to break, again, they aim to break with the classical and traditional forms. يعني يردون يتحررون من الأمور الكلاسيكية، من الأمور التقليدية. Sorry. Embracing change. So some eras, they refuse to change. I don't like to change. I like to stay the way I am. I like to stick to rules, right? The modern poetry is, in fact, the opposite. They don't like to say, I'm not going to change. No, they embrace the change. يعني يتقبلون التغيير اللي دا يصير in every time. They embrace the present. يتقبلون الواقع. The modernism encompasses the works of thinkers who rebelled against the 19th century academic traditions, believing the traditional forms of art, architecture, literature, religious faith, and social organization and daily life were becoming outdated. So, يعتمدون على philosophers, they see that the traditional forms يشوفون بأن التقاليد الصيغة التقليدية مال الart, architecture, literature, religion, these are all outdated. يعني they're all worn out, they're all old. يعني احنا نريد أمور جديدة. We want new things. This is like their motto. يعني الشعار مالتهم we want new things. احنا نريد أشياء جديدة. تمام. They directly confronted the new economic, social, and political aspects of an emerging, fully industrialized world. Rebelled, يعني ثاروا ضد Victorians, moral bankruptcy, and historical traditions, التقاليد التاريخية العادية. They encouraged the re-examination. هذه جدا مهمة. They encourage the re-examination of every aspect of existence. يعني they encourage you to ask questions of your own existence, like who am I? What am I doing in this world? What is my purpose? Who am I? يعني منو أني؟ هم يحفزون على هذه النوع من الأسئلة. Who am I? منو أني؟ شنو غرضي بهذه الحياة؟ Why is life, like that? ومن هذه الأمور إن شاء الله راح تأخذون بالمسرح Waiting for Godot. راح تشوفون بأنه this is like one of the best written works of the modernism. It really يعني تشوفك المودرنزم in itself. إنه how life is merely, absurd. Like الحياة كلها عبثية. الحياة is like meaningless. So this is, one of the things of the modern poetry. So here we go to the next slide. The roots of modernism emerged in the middle of the 19th century and rather locally in France in literature and painting. And it talks about the place where it started and the time. We have the avant-garde was what modernism was called at first. كانوا يسموهم the avant-garde. This term, هذه العبارة, it was used to describe movements. يستخدم هذا المصطلح إنه يوصف أشياء or movements that are new. that are describing new things. اللي يستخدمون أو يجربون أشياء جديدة. Which identify themselves as attempting. يحاولون to overthrow. يطيحون. they leave. يتركون some aspect of a tradition, التقاليد. Again, here we go to the word tradition. So the modernism apparently really hate the word traditions. There were real shifts in the natural sciences. تغيرات صارت. Social sciences and liberal arts occurring at the time as well. So they were avant-garde. They were really interested in literature. They were really interested in poetry or in sciences. They were really interested in new things. So there is a poet who described the whole modern era, who described the whole modernism with this new phrase, make everything new. اجعل كل شيء بهذا العصر جديد, as Rابعه. Inshallah, we will later take him not as, his works and all that. No, we'll just talk about him in a bit. So he describes it as being make everything new, which means that we don't stick to the old stuff. We don't stick to that. We tend to try new things. So this is like the basic of modernism. Tamam? Modernism was set in motion through a series of cultural shocks. Again, here we go to the next important point, which is the war. Whether it's World War II, World War I, and all that. Any kind of war. So the war had a huge impact on the modern era. Like the war, it impacted them highly. أثرت هواية على العصر الحديث الحروب اللي صارت. It made them question their existence. خلتهم يتساءلون عن الغرض مال الحياة. We have many great poets, war poets, inshallah we will take later. They describe the war, in a horrific, severe way. يصفون الحرب الشنيعة اللي كانت تصير للناس, اللي كانت تصير للsoldiers, which is like really, profound. When you read the poems, you read as if you were next to them, because this is, the whole basic of the modern poetry or modern novel or literature in itself. When you read the literature, you're not just reading words. No, you try to feel the character. You try to imagine what the character is feeling, what it's going through. In this way, when you do that, you will for sure, understand the character. And this is how I spent most of my, reading بالشعر. إنه ما أقرأ مجرد like merely words. Okay, that's it. I read it. انتهت. حفظت فتشي. لا. أحاول إنه أحس باللي القصيدة, الشعر, الشخصية اللي تمر بيه. تمام؟ So this is really important. When you do that, you will understand literature like thoroughly. Trust me. So war had a really huge impact on the people at that time, and it still has, to be honest. So we will find many of the great poets like Rupert Brooke, like Isaac, like Edmund Blunden, but one of the most profound is Owen. I'm pretty sure you took his one of his poems in the third stage. So he's really amazing. Like the way he writes the poems, he was a soldier in fact. The way he writes the poem is like يعني عظيمة بدرجة مو طبيعية صراحة. تمام. So the first of these shocks was the Great War. We go to the slide. The first of these shocks was the Great War, حرب العالمية. أو الحرب العظيمة, which ruined many lives in Europe. At that time, this war to end all wars was looked upon with such ghastly horror. يعني بقولها بنظرة horror, يعني رعب. That many people simply could not imagine what the world seemed to be plunging towards. يعني العالم ما يتخيلون إنه إحنا وين راح نروح الاتجاه مالتنا, where we go from this point. Just like here, we are going through COVID-19, a pandemic. We don't know what this will lead us. يعني إحنا ما راح نعرف إيش راح يصير. يعني الصحة تقول this is a dangerous thing. يعني مجاعة ربما تصير من هاي الأمور. So we start to question, we start to think. Like them at that time, they started to think in so many ways, of so many questions. Like, why is this happening? What is the benefit of this? Why am I going through this? And this is the core of modernism. You question life in all its aspects. You're not just waking up, oh, this is a new day. No. You question every single day that you go through. This is the core of existence. تمام? So, the horror of World War I also fed the urge for a new way to express the protests towards the social atmosphere prevalent at that time. Rapid urbanization, industrialization, immigration, technological evolution. هاي الأمور أثرت على المودرنزم. يعني هاي الأمور طغت بالمودرنزم. Growth of modern science, influence of Freud, influence of Karl Marx, conviction that the previously sustaining structures of human life, whether social, political, religious, or artistic, had been either destroyed or showing up as falsehoods or fantasies. So, the old structures, the old thoughts that we had in the old eras, يعني مثلا العصر الرومانسي, العصر الكلاسيكي, العصر الرومانسي, we have like love or nature. We have like, in the classical, we have the mind. We have, in the middles, we have like war, heroism. كل عصر إلى keywords that identify it. هم لا شافوا هذه الأمور like weird, غريبة, شافوا more traditional. احنا نريد أمور جديدة, make everything new. Okay, so الأفكار القديمة, they sought to see it as fantasies, يعني falsehoods, أشياء من وحي الخيال أو أشياء خاطئة. Modern implies a historical discontinuity, a sense of alienation, loneliness, which is really important. إنه بالعصر الحديث we have that sense of loneliness, where we feel lonely despite the fact that we're connected to people, right? يعني احنا بوقتنا هسه we talk to many friends, we talk to many people, but at the same time we feel lonely. I'm sure I went through this, and I'm sure all of you are going, or went at least in your time of life, where you felt alone despite the fact that you're surrounded by people, where you felt lost, where you felt despair, where you felt like that. So this is the basic core. We'll later inshallah راح نشوف هذا الشيء بقصيدة T.S. Eliot, the love song of Proof Rock, where he talks about a man who feels disconnected, a man who feels lonely, a man who goes through many things in this world. Yani it is one of the most amazing poems in literature, to be honest. It and his other poem, يعني اللي أتمنى إنه في يوم يدخلوها بالمنهج, وهي The Wasteland. It's an amazing poem, to be honest. So it rejects not only history but also the society of whose fabrication history is a record. Poetry tended to provide pessimistic cultural criticism or stuff like that. So يعني the idea اللي طاغية بها إنه هذا النوع من الشعر شؤم تشاؤمي. It's not something تفاؤل يعني ما بيتفاؤلوا من هاي الأمور. And so we'll go to the third class. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى بيت محمد. And then إن شاء الله تتقبل صلاتكم and all of your deeds. So let's go to the third slide. Third slide, it covers basically all of the characteristics of the modernism. يعني it gives you a summary of what is the modernism. إن شاء الله بالأيام الجاية when we take poems, I don't like to just analyze, I like to go deep. أحلل بعمق. إنه we talk about the character, not just merely about, oh, he wakes up in the morning, he does that, he goes through this. No, we like to analyze, and this is poetry. It analyzes the stuff, tamam? So, let's go to the third slide. Okay, so the most distinctive characteristics of modern poetry. أولاً الخصائص المميزة. أولاً modern poetry is written in simple language. قلنا هذا الشيء بأنه مكتوب بلغة بسيطة. Language of everyday speech, and even sometimes in dialect or jargon, like some poems of Kipling, and he is one of the poets اللي ما راح تاخذوها بالمرحلة الرابعة, بس مع ذلك we like to give you him as an example. They tend to use like normal language, everyday language, where they talk about the daily, or where they talk about the crisis that they're going through. Modern poetry is mostly sophisticated as a result of sophistication of the modern age. يعني تحس it's new, it's different, it's high, like the wasteland. يعني هاي من ضمن القصائد اللي I so much recommend to you. يعني واحدة من أعظم القصائد اللي انكتبت بتاريخ الأدب حرفيا. It's long, yes, but that doesn't matter. يعني لأنه جميلة يعني بشكل يعني undescribable, to be honest. Until this time I tend to read it, يعني from time to time أقراها, لأنه explanation مالتها is amazing. The lines are amazing. So this could help you as, as a thesis إن شاء الله إذا قررتوا تكملون ماجستير, as a literature, research literature بالرابع if you write إن شاء الله بنهاية السنة. It's really amazing. So I always recommend it to everyone who is majoring literature. Alienation. The poet is alienated from the reader. تحس الشاعر يعني معزول من القارئ. ليش؟ نتيجة للتوحد أو الانعزال اللي صار بالمودرن مان. إنه هذا المودرن مان الرجل الحديث يحس نفسه معزول, يحس نفسه like going through a mental crisis, going through an inside conflicted deep crisis, يمر بأزمة صراعية, يعني عنده صراع ويا نفسه. So this is like the core of modernism. Fragmentation, this is really important. The modern poetry is sometimes fragmented, يعني تحسه مكسر, يعني الصور اللي ينطينا إياها مبعثرة هنا وهناك. You have to use your mind to understand it. You're not just simply reading it. No, you have to use your mind to put the images all together like a puzzle, and then you get the whole idea, the whole core, like the wasteland. Again, he goes describing the wasteland. The modern poetry is highly intellectual. It is written from the mind of the poet and addresses the mind of the reader. مثلا قصائد T.S. Eliot. Again, T.S. Eliot is like the major poet of the 20th century, of the modern poetry. الشاعر يقول يخاطب القارئ, تمام? يعني the mind. So when you're reading again, not simply, no, but profoundly. It is interested in the ugly side of life and in taboo subjects like drug addiction, إدمان drugs, crimes, الجرائم, prostitutions, التعهر, and some other subjects like alienation, loneliness, war, why am I going through this again, who am I, and all that. Like the poems of Allen Ginsberg, and you're not gonna take him, but if you decide for one day, inshallah, you can find him and see these features in his poems. Modern poetry is pessimistic, which means it's not optimistic. متفائلي لا تشاؤمي. As a result of the bad condition of man in many parts of the world. تحسه يعني تشاؤمي, جدا تشاؤمي. يعني من تقرأ مرات يعني شلون نقول, تحس روحك goes through a hard time, يعني تمر بلحظات like pessimistic, يعني ماكو تفاؤل بهذا الشعر, بس مع ذلك it's amazing. That's why they describe it as one of the hardest, time era in all of the literature. Modern poetry is suggestive. The poem may suggest different meanings. بالضبط, هذه واحدة من النقاط. إنه when I read something, it's okay when you read something. You give me a different idea than the other student, which is completely fine because this is literature. Not all of us agree on the same idea. No. We tend to use different ideas, different thoughts, but then again, in the end, we will reach for that one perfect idea that the poet is trying to give us through his poem. Experimentation, قلنا يحاولون يجربون هواية, is an important characteristic of modern poetry. Poets try to break new grounds, to find new forms, new language, new methods of expression. تمام. So يحاولون يستخدمون صيغ جديدة, لغة جديدة, وسائل تعبير جديدة. Okay. So I'm sorry, I forgot to say إنه الفقرة الأخيرة بالسلايد, I don't have no idea why it's not showing here for me. So من راح أدزلكم الفايل إن شاء الله تلقوها موجودة. إنه السلايد الأخير it says experimentation is one of the important characteristic features of modern poetry. Poets tend to break new grounds, find new forms, new language, and new methods of expression. So let's move on into the last slide. It is irregular, written without rhyme scheme. So we don't have rhythm, rhyme, and all that. No, the poet writes whatever he wants. And sometimes written in prose, like the prose poems. يعني مرات الشعر ينكتب بطريقة النثر. Interest in politics and the political problems of the age. مهتمين بالأمور السياسية, المشاكل السياسية. Interest in the psychology and the subconscious, which is one of the most amazing things that I find in this era. إنهم مهتمين بالنفسية, بالsubconscious, اللاوعي. Many poets, and we will later inshallah ناخذ a stream of consciousness. And this is one of the most amazing things about the stream of consciousness, where your mind flows completely from one idea to the other. Many poets wrote unconsciously under the effect of wine or drugs. بالضبط. أحيانا بيهم يكتبون حتى وهم تحت تأثير الخمر أو المخدرات. Irregularity of forms. Modern poetry is mostly written in free verse and prose. We said that. Ambiguity. غريب, غامض. It's ambiguous for many reasons. Interest in the problems of an average man. الرجل العادي. يهتمون بمشاكل الرجل العادي, مو فقط الرجل الغني. لا. The lower class society. Interest in myth. يهتمون بالخرافات أو الأسطورة. And the Greek myth. Greek gods. أساطير الآلهة الأغريقية. هذه راح نشوفها بقصائد بروفروك أو T.S. Eliot, إنه هواية يهتم بهذا الشيء بالآلهة الأغريقية. And by this we end this lecture. I hope you benefited from this. I hope it gave you many things about the modern poetry or the modernism. Inshallah, we will meet again next week. بنهاية هذه المحاضرة, again, I hope you read well. تقرون المحاضرة. It's really simple. Like, I try to simplify it for you. Again, don't forget بأنه you do the attendance task. راح نعطيكم واجب الأسبوع الجاي, وهو the symbolism movement, الرمزية. أتمنى منكم بأنه تكتبوا لي عنها, يعني ideas and all that. Any idea is welcomed. Okay, till then we meet next week. I hope you have a very lovely week inshallah.